Listo. Enviado por WhatsApp. Listo. Está. Ya. Se ve, se ve. Está como... Puta, realmente necesito que prendan las luces para poder verlo. Ahí se miran las luces.
Sí, claro. Todo depende de la iluminación. Igual yo le voy a pedir al socio que no las deje tan bajas.
Sí, porque
Le voy a pedir.
¿Hello? Damas y caballeros, por favor tomen sus asientos que ya vamos a comenzar el panel próximo. Please take your seats as we're starting the next panel.
Ahora sí.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Romy, and I'm part of the MIT organizing team. It is my pleasure to introduce our panel on smart cities. As we all know, today's tech revolutions have been used by innovators to start designing the cities of the future, smart cities. And these are cities that use technology to develop more efficient and sustainable habitable places. To lead this discussion, we have Torsten Collin, the co-founder and CEO of Noodle, who hopefully most of you got to meet yesterday, and if not, we have time today as well. And Torsten will be moderating this panel, which we have organized to be more interactive, so we expect a question from every single one of you during the Q&A session. All right, please help me welcome Torsten up here and open this panel.
Thank you, Jenny. Lots of things. So this is going to be a fun one. So we have three fantastic people here that I'm going to introduce to you. But the topic of smart cities, I think, is a really interesting one because it involves all of us. It involves the government, it involves the private sector, it involves individual citizens. And I think before I introduce the panel here, I just want to share a little bit for those of you that are not too familiar with the concept of smart cities. What does it really mean? Now, there is a great definition of this on Wikipedia. It's a long page with a lot of history for those of you that are interested. But in general, it's about using Internet of Things along with IT to improve services for all of us, to improve quality of life, to put some of the urban assets into use, and to find new business models around how we interact with each other in a city. It's about transit and transportation and optimizing in so many ways how we live together in larger cities. And today we have so many new technologies available to do that really well. So that's what we're going to explore today. We have two startup founders and one government representative with us, and so I hopefully will be able to get some different perspectives on this very exciting topic. So first of all, we have on the left here Javier Schmidmans from a company called Monitor. It's based here in Chile, and Javier and the team are building hardware that interconnects all the different devices we have around our society. It's a tough battle to be building hardware. Javier is closing his funding round right now. The company has been around for about 3-4 years, but is only now starting to really launch, which is exciting. So we're very happy to have you with us here, Javier. And next to Javier in the middle, we have Lucy from the Smart Cities Unit of the Ministry of Transportation and Telecommunications here in Chile. And I personally find it very cool that there is such a thing as a Smart Cities Unit in the government. So of course we're all very eager to hear what can the government do and what is the government doing to improve lives for all of us. So finally, on my right-hand side here is Sandra Richter from a MIT Media Lab spin-off startup called SUFA. And SUFA is all about a new way to connect, I guess, urban different points that are essentially benches around the city. Can we show Sandra's product for a moment here? If we could get, yeah, there's a slide. So it looks kind of cool. It's effectively a bench that you sit on, but that has connectivity and sensors and all sorts of cool stuff that helps us get better at living together in the city. So that's it. Thank you so much for joining today. And I think I want to open with the first question that essentially is one for all of you, which is about what is the one thing about the smart cities movement that you're the most excited about? And perhaps let's start with Javier on the left. It should be on.
Hello?
Oh,
Hello, everybody. Well, I've been working on the IoT for quite a long time now, and it just started getting traction here in Chile around the beginning of last year. So there's a lot of opportunities that I'm seeing all over the place. But the main thing for me this year is that we are at last, we're finally starting to deploy the first low-power wide area networks here in Santiago, and that I think is a great thing. It's something I mean public low-power wide area network, because this technology has been around for a while, but it wasn't accessible for a lot of startups and people that wanted to use just a public network and pay for the usage without having to implement a lot of infrastructure. So I think that's a great step, and we are probably seeing a lot more of this in the next year. But I'm really confident that this year we will have our first networks deployed, and that will be a game changer for all the people that are working with citywide devices that need connectivity to the internet. So that's great.
That's really cool. So it's a low-power network that's publicly available for any, I guess, other startup around Santiago to develop products using that and be able to communicate with their products.
Exactly, because the problem is that today we have a lot of connectivity via cellular connection, and that has some problems, mainly because of the cost of the chipsets and the cost of the data traffic, and also it's very power hungry, this kind of devices. So the availability of these low power devices is going to change a lot of things. Are going to allow a lot of devices, a lot of objects, a lot of things that today are not, it's not possible to connect because of the cost and the power restrictions, will be online very soon. So that's really exciting for me, and it's a big opportunity for anyone that is working on this market.
That's fantastic. Thanks for sharing. So, Lucy, what for you is the big opportunity you're excited about smart cities?
Well, okay, let's work. I will talk about from the mobility perspective, because I'm from the Ministry of Transportation and Telecommunications, but I'm from the Undersecretary of Transportation. So for me, one big opportunity, actually, the mobility is an opportunity, and we, as the government, we just see that it is an opportunity for startups to do to make new services, to create new tools or anything that is possible. We see mobility as an opportunity for the private sector, and I think this is something that is changing. It's a new perspective for us, and in this mobility issue, I think that one big opportunity is the sustainable mobility. We know that contamination, that pollution is huge. We have increasing people living in cities, and so we know that we need to switch from a car-oriented society to a public transport-oriented society and promote active modes of transportation such as bicycle and walking. And in this switch for the public transportation, you have a lot of opportunities opening up, so it's like boxes of opportunities in that sense, especially from a technology point of view, because with the, for example, the bidding process that we're going through for Transantiago, we will open the possibility of pilot projects for new kinds of buses. We have incentives for electric buses, and we're trying to work on a framework for the development of electromobility. So, in the technological point of view, this is a very huge opportunity, I think, for everyone, for the government, for universities also because of the R&D, and for obviously the public sector. Not only big companies, but also startups that have things to do here in this matter. And I think that related to sustainable mobility, you have another opportunity that is the logistics, because this is something that is actually not quite well known. This is an issue that we are taking at the moment at the level of the ministry. We're working with the University under Vivo on an observatory of urban logistics at the regional metropolitan region, and it is something that we see is very important, and we lack information, we lack knowledge about this, and this is very important for the efficiency of the city, of the economy of the city, and also the quality of life of everyone.
Can I ask you, when you say logistics, are you talking about the transportation of goods, unlike
Yes.
the transportation of people? Okay.
Yes,
Right.
yes, exactly. Because obviously the transportation of people is essential, and people will always need, and every day they will need to transport more and to be more mobile. But you see that the transportation of goods is also a huge issue in the sense that it has huge consequences on the way the city works. And so this is something that we are taking to. There is a division of logistics in the ministry, and we're trying to work together in order to see what is possible, in order to have more information and to increase the efficiency of the city in that sense.
It's really interesting. We might come back to that in a moment. So Sandra, how does the bench work? I think we almost have to start there. How's it work?
First of all, hi everybody. And I'm super curious to hear who of you heard the term smart city before. So that's actually quite a lot of people. So I got confronted with that term over and over again while I was in Media Lab in Camp Larson's group, which is a research group focused on smart cities. So they're working on transportation systems, smart housing, smart farming. It's very interdisciplinary. And we find ourselves very often talking to sponsors like IBM, Verizon, Cisco, and talking with them about what is a smart city. We need to build a smart city. The future of the city. And one of the things that was very frustrating to me was that it was a lot of marketing budget, but not a lot of doing. So it was a very early phase of smart cities. And so I started SUFA about 3 years ago with two co-founders, one from Harvard and one from MIT. So it was a very nice kind of like crossing the two schools to really get going, just start, put the first bolts in the ground. And for me, so the bench how it works is it's basically a communication and power node that doesn't need any cables. So a lot of the things about smart cities or cities in general is they're hard to build. It's infrastructure. And so being able to have a plug-and-play solution that you can drop anywhere and that also has a citizen benefit is what we really want to do. And similar with the SUFA sign, which is an electronic paper display that can go at buses and inform citizens. So where I see the biggest opportunity for smart city and what makes me so excited about it is to almost think about it like software. So like internet. So what does that mean? It's like you can start pilots super quickly. It takes 5 minutes to set up a website, and then you can start getting feedback. So like this agile development of the city in conjunction with everybody who lives in the city and is part of it. And so we do that in Boston a lot. We work with the city of the mayor's office, and so they say, okay, whatever new thing you have, we'll just put it into the ground and we'll see does it work, does it not work, and then data helps to inform did we make the right decisions. And so similar with software, right, where you can track usage and figure out, okay, like what's the traffic on my website, right? Like, oh, I need more bigger clusters because like there's too much data going through. So similar things for the city, where you can start developing their agile way and looking at the data and then improving over time, and all of that while keeping the citizens informed. And I think that's like a really exciting new development where it's similarly like software and internet, where multiple people can work together.
And can I ask you about how you then work with the city? Because obviously you can't do that alone as a startup. You have to work together with the city to inform the citizens, I guess. Do you share data or?
So I have probably about like 30 government officials on speed dial. Which I never thought that would ever be a thing for me. But what's really great to see is there's a new wave of government and leaders who really care about the city and care about know technology and are very collaborative. And so working with them has been amazing because they really like move mountains in order to make things happen. We had a very good start because the company basically started on the lawn of the White House Maker Faire, or the product launch. And so once that happened, like the mayors were like, oh, we also want to have this. And so we had like a very smooth in. And then it really becomes cities learning from cities. So we worked with the city of Boston, the mayor's office, and we worked with the mayor in LA because they heard from the cities actually really, I don't know how it is here in Paris, but in the US, they really tried to transfer knowledge. And also before they go, so there's 75 cities just with our products and services. And so they normally call the city that the products are in already. It's like a reference call, right? Like, how is the maintenance? Does this work? And how does the data look like? What do you do with the data? And so there's like a knowledge share. And so we actually learned a lot by doing that. We started off like, oh, we're going to build this great dashboard. It's going to have like all bells and whistles. We put all our great software developers on it. And then we went into those conference rooms and they were like, yeah, we don't really use dashboards. Can you like put that into a PDF report? And so like being able to co-create with government.
That sounds very familiar. I'm sure as I have to. So Sandra, Lucy, are you working with startups in other ways, similar to Sandra's startups or Javier's startups?
Yeah.
How are you interacting with the startups of Santiago?
Yeah, actually, it's very true what you're saying is that the smart city approach for the government is to try to switch or change our perspective, the way we work. We have this phrase saying that before the Ministry of Transportation thought it could resolve any problem, any mobility problem, and we realized no, it's not true. We're not going to solve every problem, and we need to work with other people, all the actors that are involved in that sense. We need to work with them. As I said, the university, other ministries, because mobility issues are not only mobility issues, but it's a city issue. So it's related with the knowledge sometimes of other ministries or at the local level too. So we need to work, and with startups, we actually implemented a community of startups working in mobility issues. So we started in 2015, and we started with a simple breakfast with the vice minister. And I'm sorry he's not here, and he's representing me today. He couldn't make it today. We had like, I don't know, 8 or 9 at that time, people from the startups, from Chilean startups, working in the mobility area. And the undersecretary was like, okay, so how can I help you? But I don't have money, so
Sounds familiar.
I don't know. And the startups were saying, look, we don't need money. I mean, we actually can have access to financing through Corpo, for example, and we work with Corpo. But we need your support. We need your mentoring. We need your technical skills in that sense that you know what are the laws, you know what is the framework that we have to work with. You know what all the little details. I don't know. For example, I remember one person in another event saying, "Okay, I want to have drones, but what is the legal framework for using drones in Chile? I don't know." And we have this technical knowledge, so we always try to share this knowledge with the startups because they have very good solutions and sometimes solutions that we would never be able to implement actually because they're quicker, obviously, and they're more like this, you know, more open. Or, so, and they have access sometimes to financing that we don't, for example. So what we do is try to do everything we can, except giving money. That's true. But everything we can in order to help create these new solutions or sometimes co-create these new solutions and promote them because they're good. So we try to show and to share more than saying, okay, we're going to do that or we're no, don't do it. This is what our perspective from the Smart City Unit and from the ministry. And
I think that sounds very sensible. I mean, the city's assets are probably much more valuable than the ability to give money in many cases to entrepreneurs, right? Javier, are you working with the city? Can the city help you with this project, or are you doing this sort of on your own as a private entity?
Well, actually, government is very important for various reasons in the smart cities community and the Internet of Things community. They control a lot of regulation that is critical to develop a lot of technologies that today are, I don't know, for example, things that has to do with telecommunications, with, I don't know, frequency bands that are assigned to different providers and some are left open for public use. And they have some restrictions, for example, in terms of how much power you can have a device to use for this in these frequency bands, and that limits, for example, the range that these devices can have. All this is controlled by government because of the regulations that probably there for I don't know 30 years or something. And a lot of these regulations are actually being changed and are changing very rapidly in my point of view. And so that's very good for the market and very good for what we're doing in the city. The other thing is the government, I mean municipalities and basically the state owns a lot of property in the city, a lot of public spaces. So there's no way around it. If you want to do something citywide, you have to go and talk to the municipalities, with the mayors, with the government officials, to do basically anything that involves something that is going to happen on a city scale. So it's very important. Also, you have the role of the government as a user of the technology because they see a lot of opportunities in these new technologies to improve a lot of things that are working in the city and that they have to administer. For example, transportation, for example, public buildings that are all over the place, that need some kind of management to, I don't know, improve energy efficiency or to basically do a lot of things that today they are not able to do because they don't have technology. And startups and companies that are working in this space have the technology, have the experience. And probably, I think one of the biggest roles for government is start using these technologies and start adopting a lot of these technologies to promote their usage. Because they will get a lot of benefit from them. They will basically save a lot of money in taxpayers' revenues. So it is important to they start to use this technology and probably use this usage of this technology will impulse a lot of other companies, big companies, that are currently being left behind in this technological advance to get on the train and start moving with the times, basically, moving with the technology that is currently available.
Sandra, is there a similar type of, I guess, bureaucratic thing that could be improved when you deal in general with your cities? Is there something where you feel like this regulation is really outdated, and if only they get rid of that, your business will be much better? Or is it different, I guess, from every city?
Well, first, yes, the city for cities that's very different. Right? Actually, we chose to be the most difficult city, like Boston, because of its history. It has a lot of rules and regulations, and there's a lot of things to be permanent. I think there's one thread that I see across almost every city except very small beach towns, which is not having any funds to spend. And so I think cities are recognizing that the startups and the companies can actually help them to generate revenue or to pay for some of their infrastructure and like come up with new business models, and that definitely has a lot of like regulations associated with it. So I don't know if you guys all know this, but so when you go outside and you look at like what is like omnipresent in cities. So one of the things is the bus stops, and so who do you think pays for that structure? Most of them, it's probably not the city. It's probably GCDCO because there's a very large poster on there that says GCDCO on it, and there's a beautiful piece of advertising inside. And so that's that was invented about almost 100 years ago in France, where they said, okay, like people need bus shelters, but they're expensive to put in, and like where does all that budget come from? So why don't we create a advertising revenue model that can help the city provide infrastructure? And so we're doing something similar with the Super Sign, where we're saying, okay, we want real-time transit information, but the city can't pay or maintain that. So now we want to have an ad-supported city information system. And so then suddenly you're dealing with a lot of rules and regulations on the city side, and I think they're very helpful. What's difficult is the companies themselves are almost happy that it's so difficult because it's a barrier to entry for others. So it really like helps you stake out, okay, this is my city, these are the people I have on speed data, like nobody else can get into that city with that type of product, so it gives defensibility. And I think that's actually almost worse in terms of like the rules and regulations, because then suddenly it's like, oh, I have an exclusivity contract, and then it's hard for the city to navigate to allow like some sort of technology to come in, or I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I'm actually curious.
I think in that sense, the open data is very important, and it's very important to work in that direction. For example, what we are talking about travel planner, public transport. Here in Santiago, we don't have an exclusive contract with an application. I know that in other cities, for example, it was something that maybe the company in charge of public transportation was like, okay, no, I have my data and I will keep it for me, and I will make an app, and nobody else will be able to make an app. In Santiago and in Chile, we took another completely other direction, and we said, no, this this is public data, and it needs to be public, and anyone can have access to that. It's called the GTFS feed, and it's on the website of the government open data, datos.gov.cl. So anyone can make its own application of travel planning. And so I think, in particular here in Chile, there is a policy of developing open data and working in that sense. And I think this is very important to avoid this kind of issues actually.
Absolutely. We might have to share those websites. Also, the website of your Ciudad Inteligente
Ciudades inteligentes,
we'll find out where to share it because those are great resources for sure. Your
But
website.
I don't know if this is something to do with certain countries or not, but I'm a witness of one of these programs that is going on with the Ministerio de Vivienda y Urbanismo and Ministerio de Medio Ambiente, the environmental agency here in Chile, that they're also trying to collect a lot of data from different companies and different startups that are working on capturing information from, for example, ambient data for inside homes, for example, I don't know, particulate material or carbon monoxide, and all this information, all these levels that are harmful for humans and for kids. And they're capturing this information and getting all this data into a public database for all this. And I think that's a very good approach because there are a lot of companies that will be getting this information. Probably not now, but in the future, with all the smart home movement and all these sensors that are being installed inside homes, not only from public programs and public institutions, but from public for private companies also. For-profit companies that are probably going to be willing to share this data and start doing improvements on public housing and a lot of things. There's a lot of information that can be obtained from this data. So I think it's a great thing.
Can your low power network help sharing that data? Can it go both ways? Because that's a great point. It's not just about the government having open data, it's about the startups as well sharing back with the city. Can you help with that, or do we need to figure it out another solution?
I don't know, but it goes both ways, as you said. There's a lot of startups that can get a lot of exposure from doing this, from sharing this data. As I understand, the government officials are trying to push for some kind of seal that says these products will be helpful to, will provide data for public database and get information here for improving social housing in Chile. This seal of approval, if you like, will be in the boxes of this device, for example. That's the idea. And probably they will get some benefit from it. And obviously, there's a lot of startups that will benefit if this data becomes available somehow. So I think it goes both ways. I don't know what is the willingness of the government to share this data back, how public or not public this data will be, but I think it's a good thing that there is information and the information can be used.
Absolutely.
Actually, by law, every information that we have is supposed to be public. But it's very true. It's very true that we are very interested in getting data from the startups. We are actually working with a startup called Couple, which is a startup of, it's a game, it's an application to prompt people to use their bicycle. So it's very cool if you want to download it. And they have the data, of course, and like it's not tracing anybody, but it gives us some data on how you use cycle path. So it's very interesting for us. But I think that related to sharing the data, like with the open data from the government and getting the data from the companies, I think that is very important to develop the data analytics. because this is something that we not necessarily have this knowledge or this capacity in the government, and this is why also we're trying to triangulate with universities in order for us to have this capacity of analytics that we don't necessarily have.
Right. So I would love to open up for a few questions from the audience. So think about a few questions. I just have one more for you, Sandra, which is your product is essentially a bench that has sensors and that has, I guess, Wi-Fi. If someone comes and sits down, they can charge their phone, and there's some sort of connectivity. How does that make our cities better? What is it that you're giving back to the city through this product and this network?
So from one, first of all, I think it's helping cities to talk about smart cities. So there's kind of this like icon. It's very loud design, so we kind of do that very much on purpose because there's a need for talking about this as an agenda item and not just like in boardroom or in government, but actually with everyone in who lives in the city. However, there is also a very tangible benefit, which is so inside the super bench there is a sensor that captures how many mobile devices are walking by. So, like if I had that sensor here right now, it could like estimate how many phones are in this room. Once more and more people start leaving, and then after at night, kind of like the curve goes down. And so we share that data with city planners or with mall owners to kind of figure out what are the activity patterns in the area, and then be able to detect anomalies or be able to kind of do what I started earlier, this kind of like prototyping. And that's like what really I think is so awesome. Like you can have a city that's suddenly like responsive and flexible, and you kind of say, okay, you know, like here we did this event, it worked, it didn't work, and you can like start correlating that with other data, weather or transportation, and really start putting all together. And I think the cities are more and more prepared to build privacy policies and like, put those things into place so that we can start using this data. Because when I was at MIT, there was a lot of issues around like getting access to data. A lot of it was not real time. Kind of having a way of sharing that is really important. And now with the Sufa sign, which is this display, we can now also like start building this like ecosystem where we give back to the city in a way where we can put public special announcements based on the data and feed that into one big loop.
That's very exciting. Great. So we started a little early, so we have time for a few questions. There are a couple of microphones around, so who wants to go first? I think there's one in the back down there. We get a mic over. And you can ask in English or Spanish. We'll try to field them accordingly. Yeah.
Hello, Miss Lucy. You mentioned that the government is trying to change the public transportation to a more sustainable one, such as bicycle transportation. My question is, how the government is going to implement the infrastructure and bike paths to do this when the municipalities are the ones that designs and manage them. Also, how is possible to make a global design for the city when each municipality do what they want?
Yes, this is an issue that we have here in Chile. When I was saying that we foster collaboration with universities, with startups, we also try to promote collaboration between public institutions. As for the bicycle path, there is a manual, and it's Vivo, the Ministry of Housing, that is responsible for this manual and the best design or the recommended design for cycle path. And I think that here the decentralization process will be very important in the sense that regions will have more power, and I think this will be a benefit for collaboration and for organization among the different public sector and public institutions. But as for the moment, this is only, yes, collaboration with municipalities, other ministries, the region, the intendente, for example, that we have to work with because there is no institution binding us to do so.
Yeah, I can imagine that's a challenge for a lot of people, the different levels of governments and how to work with them and coordinate, right? There's a question down here in the front. Can you get a mic over?
Acá no. ¿Cómo se llama?
Hi, Sandra. Thank
You are providing a service, but you are also collecting information, a lot of information. Have you had any problem in terms of private privacy complaint?
Problems, I would say no, but we had a lot of discussion. So I think another thing which why we wanted the design to be loud and like have a very consumer-facing brand almost was because we wanted to be able to talk about data sharing and public privacy. So we put with every city where we work with, we put a privacy policy in place, like IoT guidelines, where we like look at basically that we don't collect personal identifiable information and things like that. We basically try to help to create those policies as well and get a lot of different companies and that's where this collaboration also helps into one room and look at, okay, so this sensor, what is it able to send to the cloud? This sensor, what is it able to send to the cloud? Cameras is another like really big thing, right? So a lot of cities are not working with security footage or analytics. So where does that get stored? Who owns that data? Like and they address this very early on, and before we install anything which has any sensors, we kind of like discuss those privacy policies, we put them on our website, and then on our end, we do a lot of due diligence to make sure that we don't store personal identifiable information.
Very cool. There's a question over here. I think it's on.
Hey, this is Gabriel from the R&D team at Sociolab, and I have two questions. First of all, it's open to everyone in the team, doesn't have a specific sector. I'd like to know how do the city transformations and new services actually integrate with the low to mid-income families in the cities? Are low to mid-income families called to participate into the smart city transformation? And my second question is actually specific to Lucy, and I'd like to know which or how do the startups that your ministry is working with actually solve low to mid-income families' transportation problems.
More about how, in general, do we involve communities in these developments of maybe, I don't know if one of you guys want to take how to involve the community into that? Or maybe you can answer them both.
I would answer the question that was specific for me, which was how do the companies or the startups solve issues of the community?
Exactly. Specifically for the startups that your ministry is working with, which of them or how are they working with the low-income family transportation problems?
Low-income family transportation.
Let me check because I'm trying to remember all the 30 startups that we're working with right now. So I don't know if there's a startup working specifically with low-income people, but with the community definitely. We have a startup called Allride, which is a car sharing startup. So this is definitely working with the community. And also another startup working with families. This is quite a nice actually a project because it's a startup working on transporte escolar. So what it does, it's called Avisa. And what it does is trying to make parents special bus to go to the school. So it's a tracking system for the school bus and to know if everything's all right with the children. So this is an example of what I was of working with families. Low income specifically, I would have to check all my list of startups. So if you want, you can ask me a little bit later and I'll answer.
That's very clear. Is that right?
So I think there's not enough work in that space, so whoever here in the room wants to start a company around that should definitely do it. If you have the passion to kind of address those issues, they're in every single city. Because of the nature of our products, we deal a lot with low-income communities. So we're at basketball courts in like rough neighborhoods. We're at transit locations where there's a lot of homeless people lingering. And it is really astonishing to see like how different cities approach that issue. Like some of them, like San Francisco, I think made homelessness illegal, which is like unbelievable to me that that's kind of how we deal with those problems. Actually, while I was at MIT, I was in a group that went to Cape Town, South Africa, to look at the commute between the townships and the city. And we're working with the transportation department. I think they want to solve these problems, obviously, right? But it's really hard, and there's not a lot of people who, like you're saying, right? You can't even like it doesn't come to mind for the startup that works on it, and I think because it's very hard and tough. But there's a lot there that needs to be done. And in San Francisco, there's like a new system that transformed old buses into like showers, for example, for homeless people, and then for like low-income families, they're trying to put kind of community development houses into their neighborhood with computers and access to internet, and try to really cross the digital divide. And I think free Wi-Fi is another one of those elements to say, okay, we really need to make sure everybody has access to knowledge. So I think it's a really important area to work on.
Yeah, I think, and I totally agree. It's an encouragement to any founders or potential founders out there that smart cities and technologies around smart cities give us some very cool new tools to take on some challenges about equality and distribution in our cities and urban environments, and I think they're really cool. So please go build those. There are people here that are willing to help. I think we'll probably take one more question before we wrap up. You already have one, but hang on. Are there any others? Yes, go ahead. There's one here. No, sorry, you in the front here? You were marking? Okay. Let's see if we have time.
So we are living the path of building a smarter city. So become smarter, it seems to me in a city that you're resolving society problems. So there are so many. So an open question for you is, what are in your minds, in your experience, the main big topics that we have to resolve with this intelligence?
The main big problems that we have to solve?
I think transportation is definitely one of them. Accessible housing, accessible kind of knowledge, meaning like internet and all of those resources. But you're right, it is a very, very long list. I mean, it then also starts to go into like sustainability, it goes into food. I don't even know where to start sometimes, is when I think about all the things, you know, that are needed. And I think sometimes I default back to what we really need is happiness. So let's start to look at that, right? Like, how do we make people be like happy citizens, right? And then you kind of start looking at what is conflicting or what is preventing them from being happy, right? So we have a lot of like depression in cities. There's a lot of those issues, right? And they're related to, oh, I'm stuck in traffic for 2 hours. They're related to, I can't pay for my food, or I can't get the nanny to go do X, Y, and Z. So I would encourage, maybe even like in an if session, it's awesome that you have this institution, to have like a brainstorming workshop to start with this like personas, right? Like what are some of the personas in the city, why are they unhappy, what can we do to help? And what I would also encourage, you're saying there's like 30 startups you're working with and they're collaborating already, right? So kind of bringing new startups or new potential founders into the room, because I mean I could give you a long list of things I think someone should start a company for, but I don't have that.
Exactly. Well, actually, we talk about a lot of this, a lot of the problems that the society faces during the talk. For example, we talk about logistics. Logistics. If you see logistics as some kind of just a commercial issue or something that has to do with retail or something, logistics is very broad. For example, it means how long will it take to an ambulance to get to a home for example. That is a big societal problem. It has to be related with where hospitals are distributed in the city, etc. There is a lot of technology that can be applied to this problem. And for example, the other thing we talked about, I don't know, how is the air inside homes? How is the air inside the homes that the Vivo, the Ministerio de Vivienda y Urbanismo, is building for poor communities, for low-income communities? So how's the quality of this housing? And a lot of these problems, how to improve this, how to get to better housing, better air quality, better insulation, so the people spend a lot less in heating, for example, in the winter. All of this has to do with a series of steps that you need to achieve in order to solve this problem. And the first step, most probably always, has to do with gathering data. Gathering data is probably the first thing you need to do to basically understand the problem and start building a solution for that. And there is a lot of other things that you will go into, but you need the data first. At the end, you will have some kind of big data analysis and, I don't know, artificial intelligence to do, probably solve a lot of these problems when it's in a massive scale. But you need data first, and you need sensors, and you need things like SOFA that is gathering data all around the city, and probably you need all this distributed technology all around the city. So that is probably the first step, and I'm happy that at least we're doing that at this stage. And we will be able to solve a lot of these problems when we have the time and the money to do that. But first we need data.
That's exciting. Thank you so much, Javier. Those are the last words. Please join me in giving a huge round of applause for our fantastic panelists, guys. Thank you.
The next panel will be held in this room immediately, so please remain seated, especially the men. Caballeros, no se muevan de sus asientos. Y vamos a comenzar el próximo ahorita en este momento. Gracias.
Al final, ¿cuál era? Tomando esto. No se puede colocar más sosa. No se puede colocar. Tenemos cortado. Ya le dije. Oye, usted sabe. No, ya le dije. Sí, mira. No, pero esto sí se puede arreglar. Es la misma. No, sí, mira, sí. No, pero la pregunta es. Ah, es MIT GSW 2017. MIT, ah, ya. MIT GSW. MIT. MIT GSW. ¿La clave es ahí? Sí. Es MIT
Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining us
2017.
today. My name is Diana. I'm a member of the MIT GSW organizing team, and I'm here to introduce our next panel, The Power of Women. This morning we heard Maureen's inspiring story about being a woman in the gaming industry. In this panel, we will open up the discussion to extraordinary women who work in open sectors. And we will hear their advice and wisdom about navigating their way to success. And our moderator, Julie Fuentes, she's the executive director at D Science.
She will be leading the discussion, which will consist of 30 minutes of questions followed by 30 minutes of discussion followed by 15 minutes of questions and answers. And she's just being mic'd up right now.
So I want a round of applause for the best panel today, the woman one, the power of woman. So first, let's start with the good energy. As I was saying, I'm quickly introduce myself. I'm Yuli. I'm a Chilena too, so I'm speaking in behalf of Chilena, 15-time US Boston, so that's been sort of what it makes me merge with this amazing woman. My role is to really get them to talk. They're the stars tonight. So the first question I want to ask you is, what is out there that nobody knows? It's not in Google, it's not in LinkedIn, that the audience should know about you? And we're going to start with Tyson.
So many things. I try to be private about LinkedIn. So there's so many things not in Google and LinkedIn. But I guess I can tell you about bike. I started biking 4 years ago. The car completely, the public transportation, and made my life much happier.
That's exciting. So we have a biker here. What about you, Sal?
So I guess inspired by Maureen's talk, I was thinking back actually to when I was growing up, and I was a pretty hardcore gamer. So I started with Atari, so very old school, and then went on to the older Nintendo. So yes, I spent 10 years competing with my older brother to beat him on all the games.
And we'll hear more about Sal today.
Okay, mine is a little bit more trivial. So I'm actually a cheese fan. Yes, cheese. A lot of people here I imagine love it. And I'm currently taking classes to learn it. Friday is going to be mozzarella. So I hope to become a cheesemaker sometime soon.
I think the secret that you also talked about is that founding a company is super scary, and it definitely scared a lot of the time. Where I'm like, oh my god, what am I doing? And it's all worth it though. So I would encourage anyone who's interested in entrepreneurship to go for it, even though it's a very tough road.
So let's stay with you, Sandra. Why don't you tell the audience what do you do every day? What is your company? Who are you to sort of for them to understand what is being your value contributions to society?
So like get up in the morning and go to the office, and I'm pretty excited about the people I see there because they have a very similar passion, mission, and want to really combine like making cities better with the for-profit organization, which is like a great challenge to have. The last couple of months I was fundraising, so most of my day was spent meeting a lot of investors, mainly male investors, and we just signed term sheets. I'm very excited about that. We're going to be able to like do a lot more things. But yeah, it really is like startups goes in phases, right? You start with your first all day long, and then
But your product, your company, what does the product do? What do you create? What is it about?
Oh, okay. So we make smart urban furniture. So we bring
internet into everyday city objects like benches or bus stop kind of signage,
Awesome. So what about you, Fanny? What is your role? What do you today, and what is your story?
So I work at Startup Chile, which I believe most people know here. It's a very well-known government accelerator program. I'm the head of the acceleration team. Basically what we do is we help startups grow faster, and by that I mean a lot of connections internationally, local, with mentors, investors, different people from the corporate world. We have a lot of alliances with big companies so that we can help the gap in between the entrepreneurs and this big CEOs is a bit scary. We also help them in training.
so that they can have all the different resources in order to take their company to the next level. Also, we have a program called the Startup Factory, which I'm the director of it. It's a program that we created to increase the diversity in the teams that we had at Startup Chile, and by that diversity we mean women. We have very few women in the teams, that's why we created this program. And by the way, we're closing applications today at 5, so anyone looking to have a startup, if you're a woman or if you're a male and have a female co-founder, you can apply as well.
And what about you, Sarah? What is your story?
So I am one of the co-founders of Vivo Studio, and it's an innovation school for young people, so ages 11 to 18. And my story and background is not your traditional educationalist story. I actually was an architect and urban designer for quite a few years. And being in that environment where you're working in the studio environment really inspired me and got me to think differently about the whole learning and educational process. And I was somebody who was very successful in the traditional school environment, but when I went to architecture school, that was the first time that I really felt like I was challenging myself and having to figure out how I learned when given really large, complex problems. And that was very inspiring, and that really showed me that there was this platform and pedagogy that could be very useful to breed and to nurture creative thinkers, but not just who were interested in architecture, but in any field. And so that was kind of the impetus that got me and two of my co-founders to come together from different disciplinary areas and to start this innovation school and to bring and nurture this mindset from a young age. So you're not thinking, after I'm in college, what should I be doing? What opportunities are there? And how can I bring diverse disciplinary areas together? So beginning to start this, this type of thinking early on was really important.
How are you, Asa?
Okay, so probably the first time I explain what I'm doing in my current role, because it's very new. Let me try to do it. I run a new government agency that was just created 2 months ago. That is structured to be a sort of task force within the government that helps digitalization processes in different industries. So, to put it in simple, we work in health, we work in construction, we work in mining. When the health sector, the construction sector, or the mining sector wants to incorporate digital technologies in their processes, we are the group they go to, so that process is done using best practices, international standards, interoperability for information, flow of information. So we are a small
about 15 people, specializing in different areas. We have doctors, people from technology, and designers that do this role of supporting and helping the digitalization of the different industries.
But your background is law, so you came from knowing all about how to make the rules to really organize the government.
Which is, like Saba said, very challenging. I get to work with different people. I'm a lawyer, I don't work with lawyers, which makes my life fun every day.
So you see, here we have founders, we have organizers, we have networkers, we have superpower women. So I want to make this, we're in the living room of my house, and this is an intimate conversation, and then they're looking at us, and please feel free to interrupt each other with what we're going to have here. One of the things that we were talking early in discussion is about, not only about the woman, but about this balance in gender, this balance in roles, this balance in organizations, that it really creates the power of woman if you are in that balance. So I wanted to ask you, Patricia, more about creating the X Factory and seeing your experience in empowering women entrepreneurs, and what has been those discoveries in the aspects of balance.
Right. So at the beginning when we thought about the program, we saw that there were few women participating, and that was kind of obvious. Few women were actually applying to the program, so it's not that we deliberately kept women out of the program. Then we started thinking about how we can make it and why we should make it, why it's relevant to make this type of endeavor. So we did it for the sake of technology, for the sake of innovation. We need to have different perspectives, different ways of approaching something, different touch or feeling, I would say, and of course different backgrounds. For us, it was easier to start with gender. There are lots of ways of getting diversity into teams, but ours was it was gender based. On the other side, we also applied that to our team. Actually, we're a little advanced now. We're a lot of women. So now we're like, oh man, we need diversity in our teams, like the other way around. But it's kind of cool, and you actually see the difference. I've been a certificator for more than 4 years, and I can see the difference when I see a male-dominant group where, like the ones that were head of areas, there were like 4 guys and myself. Trust me, guys that have their thing on their own. I remember one time they were talking about the gel we're going to do some early air and engineering. I was like, okay, this is being in a male-dominated group. But now we move to the other side, and I can totally see the different style, especially in execution. Women are very good at executing very fast. They're good at taking feedback. There's not such a great deal about decisions. So if you tell me something that I think, okay, it might sound good, like let's try it. At least I'll give it a try. And that's what women do. They execute immediately. Okay, it didn't went well, we don't do it anymore. But at least it's something that you tried out there, and you have the knowledge to say, okay, this is a good decision, this is a bad strategy, and you move on.
Yeah, and you were with children, and you kind of create these experiments where the young needs to be in projects, and it's a project-based program. So, can you tell us more in sort of in the early childhood of how do we transition to be this adult woman? But is anything that's happening in the early time for woman from your experience?
Yeah, and I echo a lot with what Patricia said in terms of in our studio model. People always come in a lot of times and they're surprised to see that there's just as many girls as there are boys in the studio. And I think it's very essential for anytime you're talking about innovation or the development of a very complex project to have differing viewpoints and differing perspectives. So we actually work in a multi-age and multi-grade environment just for that reason. So we have 11-year-olds that are working with 17-year-olds. And just as important, we have girls working alongside with boys, because you just have different backgrounds, different personalities that are coming to play, and different skill set. And we do find that when there's girls involved in a lot of the teams, there is, as Patricia was talking about, their openness in terms of exploring ideas very quickly to take on and explore different iterations. And we've also seen that we're able to focus, or there's a lot of interest from the girls' side in social justice related projects. So it opens up a realm of exploration for both the boys and the girls when we have actually young girls that are involved in the process. So that's been kind of generally very advantageous for the studio environment that we exist in, that learning can happen including sort of social justice issues and involving technology, but using social justice as an umbrella, and the technology becomes sort of the enabler in order to explore these various areas. And so we found that for a lot of young girls, having it not just be focused on just also the technology, but there's a bigger problem that they're interested in exploring, then they get deep into the technology. They want to learn about robotics, they want to learn about programming, and it becomes just enough to spark their interest to be able to dive deeper into it.
Absolutely. You were talking about the challenge of fundraising, and I want to not ignore Lauren when she was speaking this morning. She brought in numbers where the numbers are not there for women. So there is a transition point where you as a founder are just presenting your company to male investors. So what has been your experience there, and why do you think that break is happening?
So generally, I think like what like your diversity is always important, right? So like for me, it almost feels uncomfortable being all women now on the stage. Where I'm like, how are you guys doing it? So I think in general having like a mix is very important and advantageous for everything. And when I look at the numbers, I'm not surprised. I was very positively surprised about a lot of females actually during this conference speaking. I don't know. I mean, it's definitely tough, but it also comes with benefits. It's a little bit both, right? Like I think there's a specific like charm you can have with like people being a woman and like kind of trying to negotiate differently, and they're sometimes like put up guard because they don't normally have that so much, like that kind of that fresh attitude. But for sure, I mean, I definitely had a lot of moments of investors being inappropriate or things like that happening, and like I have a guy on my team who went into a lot of those meetings, and he's like, I can't believe that in every single meeting, it kind of comes up that you're a woman. And for me, like, I start ignoring it because otherwise, like, I'm not even like noticing it anymore. But it's definitely a thing, and I think it's also hard. Some of the qualities that we have in terms of execution. I think on the other hand, it's sometimes difficult or for me at least, to be like super harsh with my team, and I think that sometimes it's actually helpful to do when you're trying to like do something. And I see men having a lot better ease at doing that, where I always want to be empathetic with them and like have a conversation. So I think there's always a benefit of having all different types of gender, but then also cultures and different people together. But it's not that easy to be a female CEO that's really trying to build a unicorn company, right? And then if you're looking at Silicon Valley and you have like, I don't know, from like Mark Zuckerberg and Sergey, like all those, they're all dudes, and they also are all like socially awkward. And so it's like, how can we create this like new type of companies that have more, true empathy and social interaction, I think.
Yeah. So across the table, I mean, do you guys share or have you seen this obstacle, and how do you take those obstacles, or is it something that is not apparent to your roles of organizers of groups and teams? Maybe you can speak more in your role, Alison.
I would say it depends. It depends on different things. So I've been working in government for several years now with different roles, right? And sometimes, speaking from the leadership point of view, sometimes you need a strong leadership that is very public, very outspoken, and that requires certain characteristics. In the position I am right now, it's sort of the opposite. Since we are supporting other agencies and other companies, the fact of being a little bit low profile or coming from the back and supporting this project is seen as something positive. And in the experience we have had, comparing it with other positions I've had, the fact of being a woman, when you start the conversation, you are seen less as a threat when it comes to showing the benefits or the success of the project. And that opens several doors. At least that's how it happens to me. You get to the first meeting, they look at me and say, oh, you're not a threat. That's what they think.
Yeah, so what we're hearing here is that what you're saying, Sandra, is that in many ways we have superpowers, and those superpowers is when you use it, with who you use it, and how you use it. And I think that will go back to what will you say to yourself 10 years old if you would have different for what you're doing now?
I would say, like, for me, I've never feel like, there's just one time where the guy started looking to the other guy, which I was like, his boss, and I started staring at him, and I'm like, no, I'm not in the meeting, right? And I started talking a little bit more, so we figured out, okay, she's kind of. But I wouldn't say necessarily that it's regarding if I'm a woman or not. I've never feel
For me, it was not a chance. I've never thought of it. Now I'm encountering this and saying, wow, there's a lot of women out there that needs a little bit of a push in order to believe in themselves and be more empowered. But there's another thing, and I would say it's when you're very young. Like I've been ID'd, and I'm 29. So it's like, I don't know if it's the thing about people think I don't have much experience because I look very young, that's why they don't take notice. If it's I'm a woman, I don't know what it is. But at the end, to the people that don't have much experience, to the people that are biased or whatever, it's just a matter of setting the tone of the conversation, say the first thing, even though it's not that wow, but set the level. If you do it, the whole conversation is going to go the way that you want it to go. Okay, so if you're in a room and you're like quiet in the corner, like trying to be a little profile, nobody's going to notice you, and with good reason, right? So give them a reason to notice you, whatever the bias is that they were having. And sometimes people don't even have biases. Sometimes they feel, okay, I'm a woman, that's why they're ignoring me. No, like you're just in the corner, that's it. They would be ignoring everyone. So eliminate all those biases in your head and just do what you think is best, like no matter who it is who is talking.
I mean, I think that's perhaps I think a lot of the impressions also begin when you're younger. And I know that growing up, I had two parents who, between my brother and I, very much were like, you both are equals, and whatever you do in this, in your life, if you're a janitor, if you're a cook, be the best janitor cook that you can be. And that was always my mindset, and it was a bit of, I'm just going to do what I want to do, regardless of who is around me, and am I the only woman, or am I the only person of color. I hardly ever thought about things in that way. It was more, here's what I want to be presenting. And we each have our strengths and weaknesses and areas that we want to grow within. And for me, it was about becoming more confident in expressing those ideas. And I see, young boys and young girls who struggle with that. And it's about, slowly building that confidence around the ideas that you have to share and not feeling that, an idea is bad or not good enough to present. Or and once you sort of start to eliminate those fears, then a lot of how people interact with you also changes. So, I think those are the things that I've learned over the years.
I would say confidence is the key word. In my personal experience, I felt many times that, oh, you're a woman, then you don't run the meeting, or you have to wait until you talk. And I think it happens in politics where high level authorities is something that still happens, unfortunately. But dealing with those situations from your confidence inside can make a complete difference. And confidence not only in what you know and what you're able to do, but also confidence in who you are and what you bring to your table. Sometimes, and I did it when I was younger, I would sort of even apologize because I have to go home early because I have kids, or things like that. When you deal with situations from your internal confidence, then you realize it's something that you're bringing to people, that it's something that can actually be a positive thing, regardless on what the environment is telling you. So stay true to yourself and work from there.
There's something I would like to ask to add to your question. So you mentioned what we would like to tell our younger selves.
Yeah.
Well, that was right. So everybody here, I believe, we're in a space where there's so many talented people in the room. I think we have been beyond that level. What we need to think is the people that are younger than us, that are less experienced, and how do we help them. And I remember my first bosses, I appreciate very much what they did for me. It was very small detail, but every meeting that I went with them, I was not the important person in the meeting. I was just like kind of the executive, my boss was really the director in charge. But every time we had like big meetings, like big names, and mostly over 50-year-old men, he asked me that, oh, do you have something else to ask, to tell? And I was like, okay, I have to say something. He's asking, like, okay, I said like random details about something, but I put myself out there. So they were like, oh, okay, she said something. So then I grew up in my career, and they knew me. They knew, okay, this was the person that was in that meeting. I was in charge of this other thing. So it's a good way of encouraging the people that you're in charge of. To encourage them to speak, give them the opportunity to do so. Sometimes it's scary because you really have nothing to say, that everything has been said. So give them the opportunity to at least make an impression.
So my younger self was very, very crazy, so I don't know if I really want to talk with her. As a child, I mean, like, I don't know, I was all over the place and more like in a creative way. Like, I never really thought I would start a company. I never thought I would go to MIT. Like, I was super rebellious and disobedient, and and I think that was good. And like, I got a lot of that out of my system too. So I think oftentimes what I'm actually seeing now with entrepreneurship and our tech generation is they're going to these very young children and trying to tell them they need to start learning Chinese and they need to start doing like this, that, the other, yada, yada, yada. And I feel like it's almost like, wait a minute, everyone, like, give them a childhood. We're going to live until we're 100, 120 years old. Like, we have so much time to go. And I think there needs to be playfulness in the younger self. So I would probably not tell my younger self anything except just keep on going with what you're doing. But to the confidence point, one of the things I want to say is I think we can work on our school systems to have more kind of things like theater, so like getting on stage and talking in front of other people, or like what are the pieces of play that enable confidence? Because I think for sure that's something that everybody needs in order for like an equal conversation just in general. And you were mentioning that, like, have these supporters or these mentors, like someone who says, oh, what do you have to say to this topic? And I think that really continues all the way up. And one of the things that I've always been wondering is like the difference between like a female or male mentor. So all my mentors are male. And I recently, for the first time, talked with a female investor. And I was like, wow, this is so different. And it was a completely different conversation, and where she gave me like advice on bullying over one piece of the term sheet and like not giving back on that and like things like that. And I was like, oh wow, this was actually really helpful. So I think for all of us, like trying to really be mentors to the next generation of entrepreneurs, no matter if they're male or female, and just kind of like sharing learning is the most important.
Yeah, I mean, what you all have touched, I think, is something. There is a study. I have worked with the women's entrepreneurs in science and tech for a long time. One of the difference for me was the Latina in the States, which is something we haven't talked about. And we are wired a little bit different, and I think that was my contribution to the table in the States. But there are 4 pillars, and you have talked briefly, but I think we should give it to the audience with the name, with the proper name. One is mentors. I mean, those are fundamental for women and men to kind of make it through. Somebody telling you how, when, and have sort of your micro board advisor for your own self. The second is to have an understanding, and I don't know if you agree on this one, but the difference between having a mentor and having a sponsor. Those 2 things for us women make a difference. And I think if you start looking back and if you ask yourself who has been the one there not only to give you an advice, but to put out for you and bring you to the meeting and kind of push you, that's a real true sponsor.
I think if we women are measured in those dimensions, we start kind of breaking through who start being the outlier. The third one is about performance, right? It's not only about, I mean, most of people try to measure you how good you're doing your job. But if you monometric that, then it's hard. And the fourth one is leadership. And I think what I'm hearing from you and to give out to the audience is that it's all about the style of leadership. So I think
you as CEO, for example, developing yourself as CEO, do you have any role models for that leadership style that you're developing now after being that rebellious child? And if you can speak a little bit about that style of leadership that we bring to the table.
So I think culture is like one of the number one things that the CEO needs to take care of, right? Like as the company grows and hire more and more people, you can like outsource a lot of things, but the culture is really important as well as like hiring your leadership team, which then also like creates culture. I don't have a lot of people I can like look up to in this kind of like cultural way, which is positive sometimes, but I do feel like there's an amazing group of these kind of like CEO founder peers in Boston that are coming together and actually they talk about what they do. So like Formlab is a 3D printing company in Boston, and so generally they're like all white males, so not necessarily a lot of diversity over there in the engineering camp. They do actually do a lot of like summer camps, take the whole team together, they do karaoke nights and all these things. And so like I try to figure out a balance between like bringing in like examples from outside on how you can foster interaction within the company. But then in terms of like leading and learning, I want almost everyone in the company to have a mentor that's not in the company, so like someone in their field who can like help them and mentor them. And we actually offer like dinner money for that and things like that. So it's really like a thing we encourage. And so I think it's kind of learning with your employees together, who also like I ask them sometimes like, what was your experience in the company you worked at before? And so we have a very like collaborative learning about these things. And I think everybody at SUFA loves to work at SUFA, and it's kind of like your KPIs at the end of the day, right? And then we ship products on time, we hit our revenue goals, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, you were leading to that, I said, in terms of leadership role. Can you go more deep into that aspect of leadership that you are thinking is different and bring diversity to the table?
Well, we were talking before about balance and diversity, right? How you put self-aware and for example, I try to men and more inclined to but when you're building teams, you also need to understand what those teams are going to do. And when you're building leadership, you also need to understand that leadership is about. Being a CEO is completely different to being a minister, and it's completely different to being the head of an agency like the one I'm running now. And being able to create those teams and those leadership from the needs of what you're doing, I think it's essential. If you take, for example, what we're doing now, since we are helping others, the fact of having being able to work as a team, getting feedback, correcting directions, and also being able to work with others without being a threat to them, and to be as sympathetic and happy as we can is something really important. But what I'm trying to say is that you need to have diversity, but you also need to have the flexibility to shape yourself to the role you're asked to do. And probably this is my prejudice, but I think women can do that easier than men. That's my own experience.
Yeah, so we have like 10 minutes per question, but before we go into the audience, and I'm sure there are many questions that are out there for this wonderful woman. We talk about the superpowers of women in these 4 type of metrics. We talk about the leadership roles, the mentors, and also how to organize women from your perspective, or the incentives that the system creates for bringing more women to the table today. I personally think that in 10 more years we should be starting the men associations, because they're going to be behind. I mean, female is the future, but it's also about this connectivity, right? The world today is way more connected. And by nature, maybe it's in our genome, we are way more networkers than the small groups of the soccer team that has only 11 players. And that's another diversity aspect that we don't really get to talk too much in the conversation. So before we go into the audience, we talk about your advice to your own self, but maybe what is the advice for other women that are in your particular role that you would like to give away as a tip for not only the females of the audience, but for your male counterparts to work with women? Patricia.
Yeah, so I believe that the knowledge is always important in results, so they speak for yourself. So again, like never expect that something is going to come as easy because oh, this is this person or this specific stereotype. Same thing for men, because you're men, you're going to have it easy, right? You don't have it easier than anyone else. But knowledge, like always being like studying things, reading things, that's the only way that you put yourself out there in a good position and people are going to respect you. Don't think that going to college is the thing the end goal of studying, that's like the beginning. It's like teaching you how to read. That's college, that's it. All the other things come on your own. So I'm saying like I replaced all my novels for business books. Became kind of like a nerd in that way. But yeah, and at the end, in terms of leadership, it's very important to gain your team in that. So you need your team to respect you, to admire you. People want to work with people that they do admire and they do feel inspired. So you need to become that person for them. And you do that by knowing what is it that you're doing. They expect you to know where to go. Okay, that's the time when you're going to know that you're the leader. I remember my first role, I was the youngest in age, the one that had the less time within the team, and the one that had less experience. And I was about to lead a team of 7 people. In the beginning, I sucked. I really did, because I had no idea how to do it. I learned along the way. But I remember that the time that I knew that I was becoming not the boss of the team, but the leader, was when people started asking me things, and I knew exactly everything they were asking me. They go, wow, why do you know so much? Like, okay, it's my job, like, I should do it. So that's my advice. Always be prepared beforehand and adjust to the different levels of leadership. We have people that are very into the details, they're very detailed on the process. You need to give them more time, don't give them tasks to be done right away. As well as you have people that are totally result-driven, you should give them challenges so they feel motivated. So you have to see the different people that you're working in. And I would say there are female and male like forces, or I don't know how to say it, like energies, female and male energies. And they're not necessarily in women and men only. You need to identify both. Okay? That's my advice.
Thank you, Ms. Virgo. I'm going to add something. I completely agree with what Patricia is saying. If you have the knowledge, you're going to be respected, and if you're able to motivate people, you're going to be encouraged and working well. But one thing that you never have to forget is that it's supposed to be fun as well. You're going to have fun every time you're doing it. Build your work in a way where you're comfortable with it, and where the people that works with you is comfortable as well. I mean, we are so much goal-oriented and under pressure and trying to deliver and trying to show that sometimes we forget that a big part of it is just having fun with what you're doing. And creating those environments, I think it's key for teams and for leadership and for everybody to actually get to where you're aiming at.
And I would add on to that. I think over the years, I've always kind of focused not only on what I thought were my strengths, but whatever I thought were my weak points, was to actually challenge myself in those areas. And you grow tremendously by
giving yourself the time and the space to actually focus on those weak points. So if you struggle with the idea of even being a leader, actually put yourself in that position. Because I think part of it is we rely sometimes on our comforts and where we think we're just very good. But it's actually when you're feeling that discomfort that those are opportunities to tremendously grow. And I've seen, a lot of the young girls and the students that I work with who didn't see themselves in, being team leaders or going into particular disciplinary areas. But we really encourage that notion of trying new things and being in a zone where you do have that uncomfortableness and to kind of go through the steps and move through that because it's an incredibly experience. And the second part is not feeling that you need to know everything. I think this is one of the biggest lessons I've learned over the years and working with a really diverse team. And I also work on other kind of big interactive installation art projects that involve technology. And what I've learned is, I have certain areas that I focus in and am really passionate about, but you can also find an incredible team that's really passionate in different areas. So you don't have to know everything. I think with this mindset, sometimes if you're going to be in a leadership position, you're a co-founder or a director, that you think that you need to know everything before feeling that you can take on that role. And that was one of the biggest experiences that I had was you don't actually need to know everything. You're going to learn as you go, and it's okay to feel that there will be others to support you along that process.
Do you want to add something to all those awesome advices?
Yeah, I think I agree and disagree with all of them at the same time. I think there's so much dichotomy in leadership and startups, like, yes, fun, but again, also like set yourself impossible goals, which probably means you're going to suffer a lot. And then, kind of like putting yourself out there, but then also knowing when to kind of like step back and kind of let your team grow. And being harsh with oneself, I think, is something that all successful founders and CEOs I know is very self-critical. Have a hard time trusting anything or anyone actually, and trying to like keep control over what is actually going on, while at the same time again letting go. So I think there's a lot of dichotomy. So you can probably turn everything you said also around, and it's still true. So I think everybody needs to find their balance, and kind of like the happiness may also be the unhappiness. So like a lot of artists are very, like always in this like space. And so for me, it's never enough. Like it always needs to be more, better, faster, stronger, higher, like
In
so
Spanish and in Chileno, that is, uno sabe donde le aprieta el zapato. And I think it's that self-awareness. I think you guys are talking about that self-awareness that across the table, across the gender, we all need to do to kind of execute what we're passionate about it, what we believe on it, our convictions and our strength and weaknesses. I want to open, we are ahead of the schedule, so I'm going to overuse 5 more minutes of your time. If you have any questions for this wonderful woman, so the microphone is somewhere there. Anybody has questions here? Or I'm going to point it to people so then you get to ask. So either way, it's going to happen. Yeah. Anybody? The microphone for that? It's coming behind you now.
Hello, thanks for the conversation, very interesting. If anyone has kids, how do you include your kids or your family in the entrepreneur? Because it's really hard working.
Good question. Yeah, thank you for that question. So do you guys heard? So she's wondering how to do the balance with family as a woman and entrepreneurs.
Well, I'm gonna say I don't have kids, but I'm a kid of a female entrepreneur myself. My mom is a realtor. She also is a farmer. She does both things. But she started the realtor company when I was like months, 4 months or something. The story is that she split with her brother, and she kept the office, and they decided whether the secretary would decide whether she takes it or he would take it. She decided that she would go with my mom. When she started doing this, she started to realize that everyone thought that she was my uncle's assistant. She was like, oh, okay, I didn't know that you were a co-founder. Like, yes, I do all the work, practically, like, in reality, I do all the work. So it was hard for her at the beginning trying to adjust to this, but this was in the 80s. She figured out a way that she wanted to have her company. She also wanted to have a family. I was the fourth, so a lot of kids there. So she adjusted a schedule where she worked in the morning, for example, and then in the afternoon she told the secretary, you cannot tell anyone that I'm the doctor or the school or whatever. I'm just out in the field, and I'll return the call as soon as possible. So she created a system that worked both for her family and for her job. The other thing is that since in the 80s it was a lot more male dominant, the office she decorated as she was like a 60-year-old board meeting white man. So she put like steel tables and very like dark wood and these pictures of horses and dogs. Horrible. But she was like, okay, I need to reach my goal, and she did. And now, almost 30 years after, she has a name out there, it's doing well, she doesn't have to do that anymore, but she adjusts herself and adapts in order to create a system for both. I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs out there can create a system. It's just not only women. We have a lot more men dealing with household things and kids things and something with the family that needs to create their own system and the one that works for them.
Yeah, I want to add something for the audience. So one of the things you touch in family, and we purposely didn't touch in family, Americans don't have a maternity leave. So Chileans, we take it for granted that we're going to have the time to take care of the child, but in America that's not the case. So what I have seen is the evolution of what Patricia is talking. We, the Chilenas, got role models from our mothers that were working 24/7. And it wasn't an issue that I was admiring my mother or who was working 24/7, and I was also a very good kid. I mean, nothing happened to Patricia, nothing happened to me. I don't think anything happened. While in other cultures, that's not the case, where public policy, which is something we will talk later, and stay tuned for the digital health panel, brings a system to woman which is different. And I think that's also to kind of reflect that having the public policy in place in our country is not a given, and it's a gift to us, the Chilenas, that the American friends of mine will love to have.
And that's where I think even as if you're an entrepreneur, you have that opportunity to change those policies. So even in Massachusetts, there's no requirement for paternity leave, but you can. I think it's a 90-day maternity leave policy. So even we have some husbands and males on the team, and they want to take paternity leave. And for us, it's really about setting similar types of opportunities for all of our staff across the board. So if people do want to be on maternity leave or paternity leave, they have that allowance. So you can really change, people's what they from a personal standpoint, what they value can really be beneficial to ultimately to the company as well, because they are, if they're able to spend some time with their family, they come back to the company happier, invigorated, to be able to contribute just as much, if not even more.
I have twins. I have 8-year-old twins. That's why they bite. I get home faster on the bike. And it's, I agree with what you're saying. There's ways you can work around it. You can make work environment better, but you can also do things at home that make it better for your family as well. We always talk about work and family as things that are contradictory or opposed or that take time one from the other. But you realize with kids that you can get them involved also in what you do, and you can break that separation and actually talk about work with your kids at home, and that makes them closer to you when you're away, and they sort of understand better what you're doing. They also become a part of your day life, which is basically where you spend the entire day, and that facilitates communication. It also motivates them to understand better what you do and to see different things. So at least to me, having twins at 8 years old is beautiful. It's more of not separating from home from work, but rather mixing both words so they understand it's part of a larger system, basically.
We have time for one more question. Anybody raise a hand right there? I don't know if the microphone for her to ask.
Thanks a lot for the open and honest discussion. I want to add up to the cultural point of view. Like, I'm from Germany personally, now I'm working in Chile, and I would like to ask you if you have some special recommendations how to work as a woman here in Chile. Is there something special, particular?
Yeah, we're going to Patia and
How's working with women in Chile? Well, we're fun. But yeah, at the end, I would say there's not like every woman have the same style. Not every women are able to do everything as the same as men. There's certain people that they overcome things easier. In my perspective, having first like male bosses and then going to female, the sense of a system, you feel it rather than having individuals. That's the thing that I believe I can immediately see it. Like women, they take their decisions thinking of the system and how it's going to affect it all. Okay, so because you do understand that if you do something wrong and you have like a rotten apple, it's going to rot. It's going to waste the entire box. They understand that. Whereas men, they sometimes tend to take their decisions more independent one from the other and don't see the system itself. So the culture, I would say, of the group, of taking decisions together, of talking them like openly, very transparent, and giving everyone an opportunity to speak up and give an opinion. In the end, we're talking about diversity, so we should give everyone a chance to think, to say what they're thinking in order to include it in the decisions that we're making.
Only add something Yuli said, networks. We women in Chile, we know each other, we work together, and once you share a panel, then the next time it's easier to talk. And having those networks can facilitate getting into different positions, also knowing about different opportunities. I have an extended group of friends already that I work with, and I rely on them every time, not only for advice, but for opportunities and to connect them with other people as well. So network with women, I would say it's really good.
And in Chile, that comes with the neighborhoods. They will have ¿se acuerdan Centro de Madres? So women will always be so community and community driven. And that's happening here pretty often, and all the guys know who is putting the order in the house. So use that too. That would be my tip for you as a gringa in Chile.
So we also, women here are very talkative, and it's impressive. Like in every single place, we do talk a lot with each other, and that gives you a superpower, I would say, of knowing those special details that no one knows. And you can understand who gets along with whom, who fighted 2 weeks ago, so you kind of know how to deal with different situations because of that. You're kind of a spy.
Yeah, pay attention to detail.
You guys are like, how do you know that? Like, oh, women are crazy, you're witches.
We're least a lot.
Those guys are laughing for
Will you guys agree here, Chileno? Yeah? Yeah. Everybody else? Yeah, there's a question here. No? There is somebody here asking a question. Thank you for your questions. We didn't do like the social media, Twitter, who's asking from the stream.
Hi, thanks for all the advice. I want to ask you about the Chile. Do you think that the government should implement a female quota law in the companies?
Balance, diversity, corporate.
Well, I used to work at the Ministry of Economy, the Vice Minister, Vice Minister, and one of the areas of work was gender. And when we were working in gender, the quota discussion was really high, and we had a sort of quota for government enterprises that was actually working. We introduced a bill in Congress to have a quota-like regulation for cooperatives as well. And we entered a discussion about having quotas at board in companies, right? The resistance was huge, and you would have arguments on both sides. I can give you my personal opinion, and this is personal, it's not government. If you look at the culture in Chile and the way structures are built, I truly believe that if we don't introduce quotas, the participation of women is going to be low for so many different years. I mean, for so many years. I think it's a cultural thing. I don't think it's a rule for all countries, and it's not a solution for everybody. But in the case of Chile, because of how our society works, because of culture, if we don't force it, it's not going to happen. We would have discussions on board hours. At what time do you have your board of directors? And they're all at 7 p.m., from 7 to 9 or 10. The possibilities of a woman that actually have kids to be at that board and be focused on that meeting, looking at the cell phone, trying to understand what the homework for tomorrow is and the materials for the other class, and it's just impossible. Changing that culture, it's going to take having women there, it's not going to happen just because. That's of course. That's what
Yeah, and I see where you're trying to get, but even though at the beginning you may not find the right candidates for it, and because there are fewer women in certain areas than men, so you're going to have to sacrifice a little bit on there. But it's going to force. Take it for example, I don't know, C-level executives in companies or board of directors. It's going to force the companies itself to train people in entry-level positions in order to get and have a good career so that they're strong enough and empowered enough to take those positions. So the beginning, it might affect, but the long term is going to help. Same thing happens, I remember I met a startup it's not a startup anymore, it's a big company, but it's in technology, and they thought they were in Detroit, and they thought that there were not enough technicians and engineers in Detroit to hire. So what they thought is like, okay, let's train them. It's going to take us a while, but once we're there, we can get the engineers that we want. So they created this bootcamp and this training courses for people to learn how to code and those things. So they forced themselves in order to train those people to have it in the right position. I think that's the right shift. If you're thinking it that way, if having it because they're women and that's it, and so it's always going to be a quota, no, it actually should disappear. With every incentive, it should get underway if it was designed right.
Yeah. So we're running out of time. I want to close the panel, and then you can speak to this woman off time after in the lunch maybe. One answer to the question of quotes, Massachusetts, which is where we live from MIT, has the 2020 rule that by 2020 all boards should have at least a woman in the companies. Quotas is something that has to be evaluated in each ecosystem. Each country has to develop based on what is the structure. So that's something to add for what you asked. I want to give a round of applause to this superwoman. Thank you for coming to the conference on the basic in Chile. health panel because we're staying here.
Thank you guys so much. That was such an insightful and wonderful discussion. Thank you. Everyone is now welcome to head to lunch. So if you go to the front desk, they'll give you a lunch voucher and they'll give you directions to the restaurants. Please come back by 2 p.m. We will start at 2 p.m. sharp at that time. Thank you guys.
Yes.